it moves right. Okay, I'm going to turn it. Yeah. Remember, I was. On to that.
You're loud and clear, Sammy.
I don't know. I'm not in anything. I thought we didn't have to be in it.
Yeah.
Test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you want me to leave it on? I think it's new because of the speaker. Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The September 29th meeting of the Corvallis School Board is called to order at 7:11. I apologize for our late start. We had an executive session before this meeting that ran over. In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially for immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer a virtual option for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings, both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board agenda and packet, as well as the link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Public meetings are live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a recording is posted to the same channel, typically the day after the meeting. I am grateful that this technology makes it possible for more community members to view and participate in school board meetings, given the flexibility provided by Oregon law. Tonight we have board members Jones, Baker, Adams, White Bear, and myself, Director Finger McDonald, in attendance in person. Director El Abdraba is virtually, and we expect Director Tomini to arrive after another engagement she was required to attend. Due to technology and conductivity limitations, our virtual participants may have to be off at some or all times. So the first item on our agenda is an acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month. September is Hispanic Heritage Month. We passed a resolution last year that included a requirement that we celebrate and acknowledge Hispanic Heritage Month each year. And so to remember that responsibility, we are going to read that resolution this evening. So I will start. Whereas Hispanic Heritage Month grew out of Hispanic Heritage Week, which was established by President Lyndon Johnson in 1968, and whereas Hispanic Heritage Month was established as September 15th to October 15th through Public Law 100-402 by President Ronald Reagan in 1988, and whereas September 15th recognizes independence for Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, September 16th recognizes independence for Mexico, September 18th recognizes independence for Chile, and October 12th recognizes Dia de la Raza, and
whereas the state of Oregon has a documented history of xenophobia and anti-indigeneity, and whereas Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Latine, and Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, Chicane students and staff make up the largest racial or ethnic minority group in Corvallis schools, and whereas people who identify as Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, are Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, Chicane, have a rich history and have positively influenced and enriched our society and our schools through their entrepreneurship, commitment to community service, deep value of justice and liberty, and social and cultural life. And whereas
Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Latine, and Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, and Chicane, people have made and continue to make important contributions to education, science, art, culture, and public service, and our nation's growth and prosperity. And whereas education is a necessary component for creating a more equitable and anti-racist community, nation, and world, and whereas the Corvallis School District has made a commitment to equity and anti-racism, and
whereas the Corvallis School District has a responsibility to honor and respect the diverse histories of our community, and whereas the Corvallis School District believes each and every student must be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of the Directors of the Corvallis School District 509J, Benton and Lincoln Counties, Oregon, as follows.
Proclaim September 15th, 2021. We want to change that? Is that what we're just reading? 2021 through October 15th, 2021, as well as each September 15th through October 15th annually as Hispanic Heritage Month in the Corvallis School District, and strongly encourage families, staff, and community members to join in existing local celebrations, and encourage all schools in the Corvallis School District to help highlight this month in great appropriate ways, as well as highlight the contributions of Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, and Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, and Chicane peoples to the local community, nation, and beyond, both historically and in current times. Adopted by the Board of Directors of School District Number 509J, Corvallis, of Benton and Lynn Counties, Oregon, at its regular meeting this 9th day of September, 2021.
thank you. So the next item in the agenda is action on the matters that were discussed in executive session. As you know, we are not at liberty to discuss anything that took place in executive session. You received sample wording for the two options available to the board under separate cover. If you plan to propose wording other than that provided, please write out your motion in its entirety before reading it aloud. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move to have matters raised in the Mr. Cates complaint heard before the board.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion of the motion? No, hearing none, we will take a vote. Director Jones, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Baker, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Whitebear, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Alabdraba, how do you vote? Okay.
Can Siani give us a thumbs up?
Director Alabdraba, how do you vote? Did you hear the motion? Did you hear the motion? It was moved that we hold a hearing to hear the matters in the complaint by Mr. Cates. Okay. Director Adams, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And I also. So the matter passes unanimously. Okay, so next item is action on budget committee vacancies. Does anyone wish to make a motion on this item? We have 4 vacancies coming up on the budget committee. I've got it right here. If I can-
I think I have it up here. Is it, I move that the board identify 3 full-time term openings and one-year appointment on the 2023 Budget Committee and approve the recruitment schedule as presented by staff.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Jones and seconded by Director Baker. Is there any discussion? No. So it's Director Jones, how would you vote?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Whitebear?
Aye.
Director Alabdraba? And I vote aye, so that passes unanimously. So now we move on to our Oregon School Boards Association work session with Kristen Miles. So I will turn the meeting over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Very nice to see you in person after a couple of years. I'm Kristen Miles from OSBA, as you know. Are there any of you that I haven't actually met in person? I think I've actually met all of you in person, just haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will start talking about why we're here. Okay. I think I've shared. Maybe. Well, should have shared it. No? We'll see. Maybe. I know. It's not super crucial. There it is. So we are here tonight to do our planning session for your scholarship program. And as you know, well, as you all know, you've done this many years in a row. I've been with you for several years in a row. Tonight is our planning session. As you know, this is a half program, so we've got 4 sessions together. Tonight is our planning session. What we're going to do tonight is review your retreat that you had. I'm going to hand that over to your superintendent to mostly do that piece. We've got 3 big questions that will come out of that after you review your retreat. What we want to do then is look at what is the role, involve the work that you're embarking on, and then who's involved in that, and what are the outcomes that you want to see at the end of this. So we are really looking at work that you're engaged in, how you want to pursue that, what is the role of this project in that work, and what do we want to get out of the project at the end of it. So what I'm going to do is first turn it over to Superintendent Noss to review your retreat with you.
So you should have two documents in front of you, and these are the documents that came from our work together at the retreat. And so I wanted us to spend a little bit of time with each document. Again, when we left at the end of the retreat, one of the pieces of feedback was, what are our next steps with this work? And so that's one of the things I want to be more intentional about tonight in describing where we're headed. And really that's one of the intentions of our time together as we continue to think about the work moving forward. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you spend a little bit of time looking at the larger of the two documents, the one that has Goal 1, define characteristics, current examples, and rationale. I want to thank Kim for putting this all together for us, for taking what we had in our chart pack and putting it into a document that we could look at. And I needed it a little bit bigger so I could see the text. So she made it this way for me. So what I'm going to have you, and the text is still pretty small, I get that. I'm just going to have you take a couple minutes in review. Again, this is the activity that we did with district staff, and it was, again, your words, your ideas related to each one of our goals. And then I'm just going to ask you for some noticings and wonderings before we move on to that other document. Again, this is just laying a foundation and a reminder of where we're at right now. So I'll give you a couple minutes to go through that. When you're done, just make eye contact with me and I'll know you're ready to move on. intention behind it initially was just to, again, have a deeper understanding around what our current board goals are. So that was the intention behind the definition, characteristics, current examples, and rationale. And so I'm just wondering, since we've stepped away from it for over a month, are there things that stand out to you in terms of areas where you think, gosh, this really nailed it, or this may not quite describe it in the way I had hoped to, noticings and wonderings. And so I'm just going to open it up for the group to have some discussion about that, and then we're going to move on to the other document.
I have initial reactions, and really I'm reflecting, because Sarah, you were with us when we went through this, 2018 is when we did this last. What really strikes me about the information on this page is, one, how it all hangs together. It all creates an integrated framework for what education of a whole child can look like. And I'm also really struck how much deeper this goes than where we were 5 years ago. I mean, we worked hard on these goals before, but I mean, this is a lot more detail. There's a lot more thoughtfulness. There's a lot more intentional action embedded in this that we didn't have before. And I think that's because we've been working on these goals for 5 years. We've gotten better at what we do, but I'm just really struck at how really comprehensive and deep this is. I mean, there's language on here that I'm not even sure I understand what it means. There's a lot here, and I'm really excited by that. I'm just really impressed where the team has come in 5 years to come up with this. That's my initial reaction.
I was going to say something similar as Vince, in that it's, because not all of this stuff has been around super long, so to see like the work that previous boards put into the goals and see how it shows up in the current examples, knowing some of these are within the last few years, I think shows the work being done too towards those goals. That it wasn't just like on paper, that there's like very tangible, specific current examples of where these goals inform the work of the district. So I think that's pretty awesome too.
I'll just share one thing. So I agree. I think there's a lot more depth here that shows how, these have been interacted with over this time. Also, in looking at it this way, I feel like maybe it's just because of the way we gathered this, or the ability to step back and reflect on where we started to where we are right now. But I feel like laid out in this format, I can also see the areas where we can poke at them a little bit in a much more deliberate way. And I'm appreciating that. That I think I can see with it laid out this way, like why some pieces of certain parts of the goals have been hard for me to conceptualize. And I feel like maybe this might give us an opportunity to go back and address those in a way that has eluded us before going through this exercise.
So again, I just wanted us to have time to look at the current goals. I'm hoping that this process has helped you to have additional clarity about what those goals mean for you personally, as well as our team as a district. That was the intention between staff and board members working together around this at the retreat. So that's good feedback for me. And this will be a document that you'll continue to see as we move through the process. Again, as we think about, are these goals still pertinent? Are there changes that are going to need to be made? So we'll continue to work on that. The next thing I'd like you to do is pull out the other document that was in front of you. This is the themes that came from Kristen's survey and the action that you took to identify where those themes fit within our goals. Again, looking for, is there current alignment between what we're hearing from the community and our goal areas? What I'm going to have you do is take a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask you to do is look at where the goals, and we had some discussion about this the other day, or when we met in retreat, but to think about where a theme may show up under multiple goals. So as the example, academic rigor, I see that it shows up under student achievement, but it also shows up under real-world learning. And so however works best for you, if it is drawing a line from one to the other, if it's doing some sort of different geometric shape around them, again, I think it's just worthwhile for us to see. In some ways, it goes back to what Vince was sharing earlier, just about how there's, all of these goals to help us to support the whole child, but there's a lot of different areas where the theming also does that across goals. So take a minute or two, again, just looking for where you see a theme across multiple goal areas. And however you want to visualize it, to be able to, again, look at that alignment. I think that it's fair to say that these themes cross over into multiple goal areas, which I think you can all see from the crosswalk activity you did. I'm curious if there's other things that stood out to you beyond that, though, as you went through that process.
I noticed that the students and staff were really concentrated just in like 2 of the areas, and neither one of them were listed under goal 2, which is very interesting to me, which is equitable systems, but students were in student achievement, which makes sense, and in real world learning and health and wellness, unless I missed them anywhere else. And then staff was only in student achievement and one of the other areas. Where'd they go? Oh, health and wellness. So they were like very concentrated in very specific goals, which I thought was kind of interesting
Yeah, that's really interesting.
and totally out of goal 2.
And I think the converse to that is structural and system supports hits on 4 of the goals and ranks high on a couple. So I think it's just a bias that we have, that we come at this from a systemic standpoint.
Which is, makes sense for a board.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I was looking at what went from goal 1 to goal 2 and then somewhere else, so that they weren't just concentrated in one area, but sort of spread across. From the sort of one, spread across goals, sort of combining things. And those were academic rigor, accessibility, reduced barriers, and focus on social and emotional learning. So I thought that was sort of an interesting, that those were the things that were pulling across multiple categories, starting with student achievement.
One thing I found interesting is that I don't know that I saw the word family anywhere, and it doesn't appear very often either in the existing board goals, aside from, I think, family advocacy, but at the same time, so many of these words, when you put together outreach, even differentiation, reducing barriers, transparency, cutting across all of these goal areas is essentially connection with the community and partnership with families in order for that work to happen. That we're seeing cutting across there. Just interesting that it didn't come out through those words.
Yeah.
And weren't these words pulled from the survey?
They were
And so it's interesting.
themes.
Yeah, they were the themes that came from the community, which is also interesting to think about with what Shauna just said.
Yeah.
So the one phrase that makes it from 1 to 5 continuously is reduced barriers, which I thought was interesting because as a phrase, that is informed by so many of the other concepts on here, but it's the wording that people, I think, could relate to, and they could attach it conceptually and practically to every one of these, and so it made it onto all of them. And some of these other maybe less harder to quantify or illustrate, like equity, is here, but it's not continuously all the way through them. But reduce barriers is, so it tells me there's something about language of that's important for like what does that mean to us to reduce barriers. And but with the folks that were sorting these, we found its relevance in all of the goals.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to add, Tina?
I would just reiterate what Teresa had to say, so I'm not going to repeat.
Sounds good. So before we move on, the last thing I want you to do is I want you to put your name on each of these documents, because Kim's going to collect them, and as we're working towards developing our goals and revising our goals, we'll bring these back out as we get further along through the process, because I think that there's a lot of key learning and conversation that happened in our retreat, and I don't want to lose the work. So like any good assessment, you have to have your name at the top of the page. Oh, no. I wasn't specific. That's totally fine. No. I just want to make sure your names are on them, and then if you want to pass them down. I was teasing. of slides that I wanted to share to talk a little bit about where we are in our process. So we have connected with Heidi East McGowan, who is someone who does quite a bit of research and someone that Shauna has had the chance to work with in the past, does quite a bit of work at OSU. And so we reached out to Heidi to talk about engagement with different groups in our community. And so I wanted to let you know that that's something that's going to be happening this fall and winter as we move forward with this process. Again, the intention being taking the themes that we've heard, going to community groups, receiving input as another piece of data to bring back to you as you continue to revise your goals. You can go on to the next slide, please. So this was the definition of our work together, working in partnership with this Corvallis School District leadership to co-design an authentic process. I can't read that word because it's behind Sammy.
To initiate?
That's okay. To initiate the development of the board's director's strategic plan. Process will prioritize continual relationship building with students, families, staff, community stakeholders, while centering the district's vision and core beliefs for equity in Corvallis schools. So again, the intention is that it's a process that also continues to build community as we work together to provide guidance and input to you as board members. So there'll be facilitated engagement sessions, which we're working right now to start to schedule. A plan and debriefing with district leadership. Heidi had a chance to meet with Sarah at a recent meeting talking about the process, and then design key questions for each stakeholder group. So again, looking at each stakeholder group, are there consistent questions and themes we want to bring out, or are there some specifics related to the area of focus for each stakeholder group? And then there'll be a report that comes back forward to you with description of methodology, quantitative and qualitative analysis. I've shared multiple times how this board likes to have data, rich data that is valid and reliable, and so making sure that that is part of the process of the report as well, and then articulation of themes. So again, as we continue to move forward, and in just a minute, Kristen's going to talk about where the board wants to head. We're going to continue to develop information that we can bring back to you. So the work that you've done at the retreat and again tonight related to the themes from the community and how they fit within our current board goals, how you've actualized those board goals by defining them and providing examples, and then what we hear from the community more deeply and richly with specific community groups. So those will be the pieces that we'll bring to you as you continue this process of moving forward with your goals. Questions about that?
Expected timeline.
Our plan is to complete the engagement sessions with community groups this fall and early winter. Again, my goal is that we have new goals or reestablished goals by the time we get into February. So ideally, these sessions will happen soon. We also know that with school starting back up, oftentimes the level of engagement in the community is highest at the beginning of the year, so we don't want to miss out on that opportunity to get additional input. So some of the groups that Heidi will be meeting with are groups like our SEAC group, our Special Ed Advisory Council group, our Delta, our racially and linguistically diverse family members, our safe students, and our pride students. We've identified some other groups in our community, and also wanting to make sure that there are open forums or times for all community members to be invited in. So those will be 6 to 8 engagements, and as those get on the calendar, we'll also share them with you. So if there's a group that you have a relationship with, that would be a great opportunity for you to also hear that feedback around the goals of the board. Again, we'll set it up in such a way that we don't run into an issue with the quorum, but making sure that you're aware of each one that's scheduled will be something that I think will be really valuable for you as well. So that will be a next step that you should anticipate on. Heidi shared some dates with us late last week, and we've started to share those out with the district contacts related to each one of those groups to get something on the calendar. So that's where we are in the process. Again, recognizing we'll have childcare, we'll have translation, we'll have a meal. So again, looking at ways that we know that are stronger methods of building community partnership and engagement, and so we'll make sure that that's a part of the process as well.
I can't remember. Did we include a way for staff to participate?
We don't have a separate staff event, but the open forum would be a place where staff members could come. Yeah. So I just, again, we're on a path, and we're going to continue to move down the path. And for tonight, my portion was just to bring us back around to the work we've done, as well as talk about what kind of additional information you should anticipate receiving this winter as we continue to move forward with goals. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kristen.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, or try. There we go. Wait for that. The three big questions, I think Ryan may have just addressed a bunch of these, was what comes next, what do you hope to achieve with your consultant, and what progress should be made by spring. So that was what I had teed up. Ryan just went through those. So my next question to you is then, what are the roles of the board in this? Like I always go back to this question, what's the role of the board? And as I was looking at this with you, as somebody who's constantly thinking, what's the role of the board? I saw a number of places where that's identified here too. What's the role of the board? And under every goal, there was community input about what's the role of the board here too. And so I think that as we talk through this, and especially as we relate this to what your scholarship program is going to be, what's the role of the board in all of this? So as you work with your consultant, and what is the place for the MSP in this project? So let's start to think about the work that you want done with your consultant, where you want to be by spring, and how can this process, how can your scholarship program help get you there? So as we're like scaffolding on top of the work that you did in your retreat, everything you just went through, the goals that you're building, I took notes on what you were talking about, and so one of the things that you talked about, one of the themes that we're pulling through is reducing barriers. That's one of the big themes, and I'm hearing like, oh, there's a big role of the board in that. But as we're looking through your community feedback, what you hope to do with your consultant, the timeline on that, what is, just big general question, what is the role of the board in all of that? What is your thinking on this thing that you're doing?
I mean, I think this may be sort of going past the scholarship program, but the sort of goal with this is the community outreach and then taking that information to revise our goals and update our goals. And then the board can then use those goals to make sure that we have policies and budgets and those kind of things that are, just as our staff uses the goals to guide their work, we need to take those goals and moving forward, use those goals to guide policymaking and budgeting and the pieces that this board actually connect on.
Right.
I'm actually really excited about this process.
No way.
Because, you know, you're asking, what is the role of the board? And, you know, actually, functionally, the board is not doing a lot with it. And really, we're acting as the crucible for the stuff that's going to get put in. And we've already started putting stuff in the crucible. This work that we were doing, the last session that we had, we were processing information that we already had, rethinking about it, bringing some community input that Kristen got for us. We're going to go get some more community input. And then we're going to get our staff, we're going to bring our staff into the room with us, and we're the vessel. And by virtue of the authority of the board, the institution of the board has to be where this work happens. So we're kind of like the bowl where all this happens. We're going to throw it in, where we're going to process this. And really, we're creating a lens. That document with our goals and all that information on there, that's a lens, but it's not, it's hazy. There's a lot of information there. You can't see through it yet because we haven't polished it. And so that's what we're going to do with all this other information and the support of our staff and the support of community and all the people that are going to come alongside us as we go through this, is that we're going to polish that lens. And hopefully at the end, February, March, later this spring, we're going to have a nice clear lens that then we as a governing body can, just like Sarah was saying, that we can look through and focus our attention on the things that we know are going to make a difference for kids in our community. So I'm getting goosebumps because it's a really cool process that y'all have designed for us. It's really, thank you.
It's like processing all the information that comes in too, right? And taking that intentional listening time, I think, is a big part of it. And being receptive and open, I think, is a big part too of the role of the board, in the way that we hear what's offered and also in how we like process all of it. And I really like that idea of being like a container of all the ideas and not letting them like fall off the side or spill over, but just like keeping them all in there in a way that makes sense. Thanks for that metaphor.
Use the term holding space. That's kind of what we're doing, is we're holding space for this work to happen.
I think that in addition to the outcomes coming from this being really exciting and having that opportunity to really dive in, that process that everyone's describing is just as important, if not more so, to help get us there in terms of thinking about the last few years of the pandemic and the separation and even the division that has been created and happened in community, and even just the separation and barriers between the board and the community from not having active presence as well in schools or in the community as much as the board has been able to in the past. And so this is also a process to rebuild that opportunity to be in the community, to be listening with the community, to open those doors again in person and in different ways than we've been able to the past couple of years.
So being as familiar as you all are with the scholarship program and the kinds of things that we have done together in the past, how would you, let's think for a minute, how would you see this program walking alongside or embedded with, somehow integrated with the work that you're already doing? How can this process be facilitative or support the work that you're doing?
I sort of feel like the scholarship program part of this work is the sort of synthesis part, the taking the input and the things we hear from the community. It's all in Vince's crucible, and, you know, deciding what comes out of that crucible. And you're getting us from the, you know, all of the information we get to a usable product.
So your consultant is gathering that information. This project is helping you, like, refine that and get to those. The facilitative part is that decision-making piece, where you're polishing that lens. Okay, yeah. Oh, I cannot see him. Yes, Sammy, please. Thank you, Sam.
So last year, we really prioritized community engagement, and the superintendent has teed up a wonderful opportunity for this board to be face-to-face engaged with the community in a way that we haven't had opportunities in the past. I think a role that you can play for us is holding us accountable to make sure that we're showing up and being present, and then also communicating out about this process and stepping into our delegate role and communicating, celebrating the success of this process out in the community, and having some sort of community engagement plan where we're committing to engaging community in our various constituencies.
Okay, good.
And it's been helpful to have, like, questions asked to us, like, have you considered this aspect of it, like the impacts, and like to think deeply about what decisions we're making too. And so I think that plays a big role in it too, in that processing part of, like, have you thought about trying another way, or is that the end of what you're getting out of this input? And what are those long-term impacts and those kind of things, I think have been super helpful too.
Follow-up thought. We also have a communications director in the back of the room. This board needs to practice collaborating with our communication staff and getting good at how we're getting on message, getting on the right message, and sticking to that. Just practicing that skill.
And that's one of the things that that I think has gone. I mean, I've always told you, and this is not me making this up, is that one of the things that I think that this board has done over many years of doing this program is that you make the highest and best use of the scholarship program. You really do. And one of the things that has always gone really well in my experience is that I have been able to collaborate with your staff. And, you know, the first year that we did the mental health piece, and it was Sabrina and Joe, was that right? And then with Marcianne, and so I would love to collaborate with your staff and your consultant, and do that kind of work and really embed the work of this project with the work that you're already doing. So, and Ryan and I talked about this, so I could see even being, an observer at certain points while you are receiving information from others. And then just facilitating what's the next step in that. And so I think that that's a great idea, is, coaching as you are getting information from others too. So thinking about, well, let me pause. What are other ideas, or what are other thoughts too? Because I'm taking a lot of notes. This is really good in designing this program. I don't want to cut anybody off. Any other thoughts?
Actually, frankly, I'm starting to think of next year's scholarship. Like, how, I feel like each of these scholarships, we keep like doing something, and then we need to work on this piece of it. So next year we're going to apply. And so I'm thinking of like how we communicate, once we have developed this lens and developed these goals, how do we then communicate to the community how those goals are being used, and how what the school district is doing and what the board is doing are in response to the input that they gave us this year. So that's not for this year, but next year, look for that application.
On time.
On time, right?
Exactly. Nope, never.
I just feel like this is like a classic group project. Like, we just can't get it done quite on time. Everybody tries, but just not quite there. So it's funny.
Exactly.
But then we do a really good job. Yeah.
Roll my eyes at you and accept it anyway. Other thoughts? Any other thoughts? This is great. This is, you're helping me make a mental model of this, and you've given me a lot of really good detail. So my next thought about this is timing of when you're going to be getting information, and then when we meet, because I mean, Ryan and I meet to, sort of gather information and plan sessions, and I think the next time that we're meeting is in January. I can't remember. Kim, can I turn to you for that? Thank you so much. Because my question to you, as we're looking that up, will be, what is your timeline for working with your consultant, and what kind of information do you expect and when? Right, yeah. What was that? Sorry. Okay. Okay.
The goal is to have the information from the community outreach, from the consultant, before we meet in January, so that when we meet again, we have information to work with.
Okay. So there might be, so if they haven't already, well, we can plan this out, depending on when they present that to you, and maybe that could be like unless you need it ahead of that, maybe that's when you get it. I mean, again, maybe you need it before that, but maybe that's the session where you get that, or there's some sort of reporting that or maybe you've already gotten it, and then we work on, okay, what do you do with this right now, like with this preliminary information? Okay. Yeah. Right.
Ideally, I think it would be great if in January would be the time that we could have the information presented. So that could be one of your sessions, so you could be with us and hear that.
Yep.
As well. So that's one of the pieces you and I can talk about.
Yep.
Coordination around.
Yeah. That'd be great. Okay.
And we get you in June as well, at the very end?
I think we had January, I mean, we can change to June. I don't,
We get a summative session, some sort
Yeah.
of something at the end.
yeah, absolutely, we'll wrap it up.
So I'm thinking, maybe a so what moment at the very end from a board governance standpoint. I mean, you can see from the sheet, there's a lot of detail and a lot of it is well below us. It's the grass 30,000 feet
Yes.
down. So then we're gonna have to go, what is this board gonna do? What's gonna change for this board? How is our practice gonna change in response to this change in goals and the shift in the strategic plan?
Yeah. Yeah, we won't leave this project just saying like, that was fun. Great, you're off on your own. We won't leave without a plan. And we won't leave without, sending you off into, okay, so we've done this. I mean, I really like, the visual of refining the lens. What do you do with this? We don't leave without knowing what you're gonna, all of this information that you've gotten from all of these various sources, what next? What do you do with this? How do you launch into next year's thing, and what do you take, what became important that you take into your next year's plan, whatever that is? Refining your goals, applying what you can to what you're doing, your policies, your budgetary decisions, your programmatic decisions, the kinds of things, your community outreach decisions, the kinds of things that you do. And so, yeah, we will not leave without putting a bow on it and saying, go forth and do this. So, absolutely.
And always to have the time for the evaluation piece as well.
Yes.
For board evaluation.
Yep, yep. Good. So my job from here is to write this up and get it back to you because I've got ideas swirling. You've given me a ton. I want to leave space for any other things, but I don't want to just leave and be like, I've got a plan in my head. I want to get this back to you. I'll send it by way of Ryan and sort of write up what I heard that you said tonight, and then draft what, obviously, Ryan and I connect, what it looks like then in January based on what you're going to be getting from your consultant. I see myself as being more of a receiver of information, an observer at that point too, if that's where you get your information from your consultant then too, and really constructing what the next sessions look like based on what you're getting. So what I want to get back to you is, here's what we constructed tonight, and give that back to you to make sure that that's aligned with what your thinking was and what you told me. So that was my plan for tonight, was to get that information from you, to leave with a constructed plan. What other questions do you have for me, or what do you need from me? I think I've wrung out from you all I need from you. Okay. Great. Sure. I'm gonna have your meeting back. Thank you all very much. It's very exciting to see you and your faces and to be working with you again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. Good to see you too. And we look forward to hearing the information from our community and digesting all of that. So, next item, do you want a break? Does anybody need a break? I could actually use that. So let's take a 5-minute break. Corvallis School Board meeting is back in session. The next item on our agenda is the first read of our new board norms. So Vince, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk process, so thank you for entrusting me with this. So I got a response I got some feedback from a person, so I didn't do this all by myself, but when I started revising the document, I nibbled around the edges, and then it became abundantly clear that I was going to fundamentally change the document. And so I shouldn't apologize, but this is a pretty significant departure from what we had before. But as I wrote this, I was really trying to capture the tone, the culture of this board. As I was doing the rewrite and how I restructured it, because the way it was structured before was the same structure that we had when I first got on the board in 2013. So with the input that I got and then what I had heard members say, I don't know that I changed a lot. I did take things out, and you can see in the marked up version where if something was vague or inspecific, I struck it and just removed it. Or if it was something that isn't an issue for this board anymore, I removed it. And really just tried to focus on our values and capture the way we approach the work that we do. And so with that, I would love to get feedback on this if you'd like me to continue revising. Or first, I'd love to check in and just see, is this format, does anybody have any real a problem with this, or thinks the previous version is more appropriate? Did I go egregiously wrong with this approach? This is a check-in.
I'll say, one comment. I liked the organization. I liked the retitling of the sections, how we approach, how we meet, how we engage. I thought that was really helpful. It's a lot more clear what these sections are supposed to contain, and I think more relational in the way that that terminology is more relational. So I appreciated that.
Thank you.
I was just going to say thank you, Vince, for taking the time to work on it and make it feel more reflective of what we do, and agree with Teresa on the terminology, is because words are really important in everything, which is why I have a couple feedbacks too. But
Yeah,
for
and I anticipated that.
for when we get to that, and I know you did, so when we get to that point, I'll be ready for that. But thank you, first of all.
Feedback is good too. You can give me edits.
Okay, well, if it's edit time, then.
Yeah, go ahead. I just repeat what y'all said, so.
Okay. I had, for B1, for board meetings will start and end on time, just a suggestion to put like to the best of our ability or something like that. That's less definitive, because I think this evening.
As practicable.
Yeah, something along those lines, because just like as shown tonight, we needed a little bit more time, so we didn't start right on time. And so I think just having that flexibility. And then in B2, it says our members will be allowed to speak twice. And I had a question about that, because I know we tend to not just only speak twice sometimes, and also it contradicts A4, which allows members to express themselves without feeling rushed. And so I think that contradicts itself a little bit. And then B3, do we have another word other than regulate? Because that one feels a little like oppressive, and like regulatory sounds very, but yeah.
How about facilitate?
Sure. Yeah, facilitate's a great word. I know what you're saying, and I don't think that's the way it lands. And then C1, if we can think about using the word students, or the phrase students in our district versus children, because we do have adult students, like legal adult students in the district as well. The educator of children, so like students in our district, something along those lines. And for B2, or C2, instead of the word scarcity, could we maybe use limitations so it's less reflective of like scarcity models and modes where it seems less frantic? And just something like that, because this little terminology changes, I think will help it, yeah, a little bit more. But those were just my suggestions. It wasn't a 10. Surprise, surprise, Vince. Just
So
kidding.
I want to go back to B2, which
Okay.
is a procedural change.
Yeah.
That's a two-time round robin approach.
Right.
How do board members feel about that? And I guess I looked at the chair.
Yeah, I think we've not been that formal, so I don't think we've been that formal since I've been on the board that I can remember. So it's whether, I think my sort of hesitation with that is how it would be interpreted. Is that going to be interpreted in we're going to go around and everybody has a chance to speak, we're going to go around, everybody has a chance to speak, or is it going to be, as we do it now, where the board chair kind of keeps track of who's making comments, and if somebody's already made several comments on a topic, we let somebody else have a chance. So I think it's more an interpretation, and I think that will depend on the board and the chair that are sitting at this table each year. So do we want to have it there in a way that can be interpreted differently?
So should I make it less detailed and say that we have a protocol in place that will ensure that the board will conduct business in an efficient way, and conduct deliberation in an efficient way?
The reason I brought it up, because it does contradict one of our other points. And also, it's not what I've experienced like ever being on the board. And I know I'm not like been on here for super duper long, but I understand like having a model in place for future boards as well. But just thinking of as far as like how we're containing thought and deliberation and conversation, and if somebody has another idea sparked, they already spoke twice, and then therefore they're done. So that, I mean, I get the point of it because it is used to regulate, I'll use the word, conversations, and I know that's why it exists.
So one of the things that I
Can we
Oh,
get,
Sam.
Sammy's got a comment. Can we
Okay.
let Sammy talk?
Yeah, thanks. I think part of the maybe the origin of where this came from is the procedural rules on Robert's Rules of Order during the discussion or deliberation on a motion, where you would go over round robin for first run, and then the second run. If everybody who wants to speak spoke, then you allow a second run, and then the chair gets the liberty of closing discussion, unless the body says, let's talk more, or we would like to talk more on the motion. So just reflecting on the intention of it, I think there's two modes, and Sarah's right, we've been informal most of the times. However, the chair might need to resort to going back to, I don't want to call it going back to formality, but to procedure, when there might be a time, and maybe this is not for our board today, maybe it's in a future board or in a time where there's no closure, and there is a need of decision or a motion to move on rather than tabling the thing and moving on from there, which means you have to really debate, you have to really talk about the issue, and you have to probably shift from informality to formality to have a closure through action as a board, through a motion. And that's where I would say it might be still fitting to have the Robert's Rules of Order 2 times before we vote on the motion. So I would say in this situation where we're discussing the board norms, or last item where we're talking about strategic planning, this point does not belong to it, because we might want to speak multiple times on multiple issues, or one issue multiple times. But when it comes into, okay, we really need to move the conversation on through motions, because that's the job of the board, we need to make a decision. I feel this might be appropriate, and we might need to resort to it maybe once a year but I feel the chair should have that in their back pocket if necessary and when necessary. And in when I was chair, I think I might have needed to use it once.
But it's sort of in the how we meet section, not how we talk about like things. Does that make sense? Because it was framed as if we're deliberating on a motion, and that's not how that's worded. So I get what you're saying, Sammy, because that's totally how, like, for the motions, but not how we meet in general, like for the, because it says, this one's in business meetings, speak twice to each agenda item, and we don't vote on each agenda item. There's not action with each thing. And so that's where I think there's a little bit, like, if that's what that's intended for, then I think we should just put, instead of each agenda item, matters being voted on or something like that, where it makes more sense, because if it said that, I would have probably got it a little bit more.
Go ahead.
I was just going to suggest maybe that we just add something that indicates that we will follow Robert's Rules of Orders when we are having deliberation, and then we can apply whichever one of them is relevant, assuming the board chair knows them, which I'm sure someone will help the board chair know them if they don't. But that's a procedural thing, but it's very specific to when we use it, and so I think we could just call it out separately.
So, I mean, the board is kind of settled in on the point that I was going to make. And one of the things that I tried to do in this document is draw a distinction between the way the board operates in a business meeting versus the way the board operates in a work session. And those are two really different processes, where a business meeting is intended to be efficient. A work session allows us the space to have those conversations that we need to process difficult issues. And so I think I've heard enough. I've captured some notes here. I can do a rewrite on this that I think can bridge that and capture that, what I think we need.
I just wanted to be mindful that not everybody processes and communicates the same way, so it may not be as efficient as we're all thinking it's going to be, and I don't want to place barriers on board members to not be able to voice because they communicate or process.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why two-time round robin, that technique exists, is for that very reason, is to ensure that each and every member of the board has an opportunity to be heard. And that's why I included it here. And that's why I implemented it when I was chair and Sammy continued the practice. And you know, we didn't do it in a very structured, linear way. We have always been kind of, we speak by, you know, when the time comes up, and we mark off who spoke, and I appreciate that process. I think this is a very respectful board. We deliberate well, but the cast of characters will change.
That was going to be my point, too, is that the cast of characters could change, and right now we don't have board members who are just dominating conversations and derailing them because of that. And so having some kind of formal process to fall back on if needed might be a valuable thing in the future.
Can't a future board just change these anyways, though?
They can.
Yeah, that's the only thing is, like, no matter what we put in there, they can be like, we're taking that out. So, just saying.
So with
Thanks, Vince.
1 minute and, oh, Sammy's wanting to talk?
Yeah, sorry if I talked over you. I just want to say I think part of this is a recruiting tool. When hopefully when we recruit board members, we could share this before they decide to run. And as they join the board, part of introducing them to the culture of the existing board is sharing those norms with them, and they get to vote on them, they get to approve them and review them. So I think it's kind of not only a commitment for us, but expectation for those who would like to join us, an invitation for them to agree with us on those norms.
So I'm noting that there's 42 seconds remaining in this agenda item. I will take these suggestions. Thank you very much for this input. And I am meeting with the superintendent, I believe, next week. Is that? I think so. to work on the board superintendent operating agreements. I'll get input from him, and then I will come back with a similar set of documents and solicit your input.
Can we extend the time since we went under time with Kristen? Because I feel like other board members might have had ideas besides me.
I'm happy to extend time if somebody would like to. Lou has proposed that, so if we have more comments that, okay.
B1, the board will use time wisely. I still think that word is just weird for, like, it's hard to conceptualize. So could we rephrase that maybe to say something more like the board will use time to engage in relevant and topical discussion and just take out wisely altogether?
Done.
And then if we are going to talk about our practices, I think something in there about a deference to the board chair when the board chair indicates we need to move on out of courtesy. That's a practice we have. We hold that, I think, really well. And so I'm just like spelling that out would be, I think, good.
Got it. Thank you so much.
And my comments were around words that have already been mentioned, so let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is board member comments. Does anyone have anything they wish to share?
I just want to say how cool the Linus Pauling cross-country team is, like, just tearing it up this year. And both the boys and the girls have won both of their meets, and they have another one tomorrow. And just, I want to give a shout out to the coaching staff for that too, because they literally have 80 children literally running through the woods that they have to keep track of, and they haven't lost anyone. But also they really keep them energized, and it's really exciting to see them come back and be all like feeling really accomplished. And so I'm in awe of people that can facilitate youth sports. And then to convince kids to run, which is not my thing, but to convince them to actually go out and run is pretty awesome. But the team's doing really well, so congratulations to them.
I just say I'm glad that we're almost a month into school, and so just wanted to point that out and say thank you to all the teachers and staff for all the back-to-school nights you all are facilitating right now, and getting families into the buildings and engaging with them. That takes a lot of work, and I just want to say thank you for that, and a reminder to the community that school zone speeds are a thing. I see people zipping by many school zones all the time, and just remember that there are students in school.
I'll just share some gratitude building on that to the staff and leaders at Sheldon Middle School tonight who had back to school night, which was why I came in a little bit late, but it was just such a joy as a parent and family member. I was also there with my niece, got to show me around as one of the web leaders, and just to be able to go and see classrooms and meet teachers and other staff and be there present in person this year was really a joyful event. So thank you, everyone.
Anyone else? I have a comment about comments. And this is something I've been thinking about, and it came up in some of the feedback that Vince got, that you often at the beginning of meetings we have board member reports, and at the end of meetings we have board member comments. And I feel like the two have been bleeding together. I sort of envision board member reports as being time to report on something that you've attended as a board member that's relevant to your role as a board member. And then board member comments are more like what we heard tonight, where it's, I had this experience in our schools and it was really great, and I feel I feel gratitude towards the teachers and the staff who are arranging that, because I think those comments are important too, but it's different than a board member report. So I don't know, if people have feelings about that and they want to share those with me, I would be glad to hear it. But maybe as we're going forward, to try to you think about where in the meeting, and I know I've probably been, in fact, I know I've been guilty of this too, just to think about where it is appropriate to report what you are reporting. If nothing else, the public is usually present at the beginning of the meetings when the board member reports are, and they're probably, if they're tuning in to see what we're doing as a board, our board member reports are really what's important for them to hear probably, as much as anything. So that's my thoughts, my comment on comment. So.
Also, we didn't read the Indigenous Peoples' Day proclamation tonight because it's going to be at the next meeting. I just want to make sure people knew that was coming too, and that the City of Corvallis proclamation signing will be at LaSalle Stewart Center on October 10th at 5:30 p.m. That's open to the public and a partnership between OSU and the City of Corvallis. So just want to make sure people knew when that was happening and it was a thing and why you didn't hear it tonight.
Anything else? Well, with that, we are adjourned.